Let's get started.
Welcome to the Financial Purpose Podcast. All opinions expressed by me or guests of the podcast are solely our own opinions and do not reflect the opinion of Life Moves Wealth Management. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be relied upon for any investment decisions. Clients of Life Moves Wealth Management may maintain positions in the securities discussed in this podcast. Hey, welcome back to the Financial Purpose Podcast. I am Dale Shafer, your host. This is episode 94. I think, Josh, do I have that right? 94? He said no really loud, like, no, you moron. Which episode is this?
Maybe it is. Hold on. Sorry,
I'm going to throw it right back. This is going to be funny.
Oh, it is 94.
It's 94. Thank you, Josh. Josh and I were talking before the podcast. We did a screening with a group of our friends of the new Happy Gilmore movie on Friday, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Waited 30 years for that movie to come out, and Josh said he watched it like 4 more times over the weekend. So, yeah, good stuff. And also, Josh let me borrow his pen because I don't always carry one. And it's so funny because last week this has nothing to do with anything, but whatever. I'm going to share it anyway. So last week, this banker gave me a pen and pencil set, and it was like, you know, kind of like an okay pen, but it was a mechanical pencil with 0.7 lead, which made me really happy inside. The only other pencil that makes me happy is a number 2, but it has to be a Ticonderoga and preferably the black one. I don't know why this stuff matters to me, but I didn't. So I was sharing this with a colleague of mine, and she says to me in response to this, and I was talking about my pen preferences. Now, the pen that Josh let me borrow is a numbers. It's a S gel 0.7, which again is okay. I like the gel pens, nothing smaller than a 0.7, and I refuse to write with a ballpoint, in case you were wondering. I prefer rollerball or even fountain pens. So anyway, I was explaining this, and the comment that came back at my direction was, how long has this been a thing for you? Like, who hurt you? So anyway, whatever. We're all particular about our certain things, but we're going to talk about something that does matter today. And I'm going to talk about really your money, your life. This is a continuing conversation from episode 92, which was with special guest Carl Richards, which was a great conversation. If you haven't listened to it yet, I recommend you actually watch it. Go to YouTube, find the Life Moves Wealth channel, or go right to lifemoveswealth.com and click on the podcast link, and it'll show up right there. The YouTube video will show up there, and watch that episode. It's about 34 minutes long, and I know that may sound like a lot, but sometimes it takes me 34 minutes to find what I want to watch on Netflix. So that 34 minutes conversation with Carl, great use of time. I highly recommend checking it out. It's going to sound a little bit different as far as like traditional financial advice and that kind of thing. And I think that's the point. So that's what I want to talk about today, again, as a continuing episode. And I'm going to put a little, this is a Venn diagram I'm going to put on the screen. And this is really cool. Like, Josh built this whole thing on his iPad where I just push this button and it shows up on the screen. So pretty darn cool. But this Venn diagram, your money, your life, if you can imagine it in the middle of it. So this Venn diagram, if you're listening, is overlapping, and there's an arrow pointing to it that says real financial advice. If you have listened to many of the episodes or any of the episodes of this podcast, you've probably heard me talk about the concept of "and" when it comes to financial planning. And so this graph I really like because it's, or diagram, I should say, I really like because it's your money and your life. And that's where the intersection of real financial planning happens. And that's important because it comes down to some of the choices we make that feels like they're opposed. You know, we have to choose one or the other. We have to go right or we have to go left. We have to go north or south. We have to do this or do that. And a lot of times those or questions really aren't the right conversation to have. They're not, maybe they're the right place where we end up with a decision to be made, but we have a conversation that aids us with that. So that's what I want to talk about today. So I want to share in this episode, rather than, kind of pontificating about this or going on a tangent about it, I just want to share a couple of stories that have shown up over the past couple of years with clients, and where this really has a rubber meets the road, real life kind of impact. And I started talking about a story, and this was a few episodes ago. I think I mentioned this, but it was with a client. This was probably, I don't know, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe. And it was kind of early in my, advisory training, where I was starting to lead client meetings. And client came in, both very successful professionals. She had a advanced degree, was an executive. He was in a sales role, very successful. And we're going through this format of a meeting. And so the format of the meeting was set up to cover all 7 areas of financial planning. And so we always started with the net worth. Has anything changed in what you own or what you owe? How does that all look? Okay, fine. Next section is cash flow. How's money in? How's money out? How's your cash reserve? What's in the bank accounts? Do you have enough there? That kind of thing. Then we would move to risk planning. Any changes in risk coverage or risk needs? Bought a house, sold a house, got a raise, need new disability income, how's life insurance? Are there any recommendations that are outstanding with any kind of risk exposure? Do we need to talk about long-term care insurance? All of those kinds of things. Then we would move to investment planning. Here's your rate of return. Here's what's in the portfolio. Here's a quick market update. Here's how bonds are moving. Here's what the Fed's doing, all of that kind of stuff. Then we would move to tax planning. Do we need to do anything with the tax planning? Should we set up a meeting with the CPA? Did you file taxes? Are you on an extension? Are you paying your quarterly estimates? All of that kind of information. Then we would move to retirement planning. Here's how on track you are for retirement. Here's how much income these investments will generate. Here's how much income we expect Social Security to provide. What is there a gap? How do we need to fill that? Those, sorts of conversations. And finally, we'd end with the estate plan. Do we need to review the will? Do we need to review the trust? Do we need to meet with the attorney? Have you changed your mind on who's going to be your successor guardians? All of that information. Well, in this particular meeting, we got to cash flow. So that's only the second step. And I asked a question that was something like, how is cash flow feeling for you? How is your income? How have sales been? Are you expecting a bonus? Are you expecting any changes to payroll? That sort of questioning. And the client, the wife, says to me that she's considering quitting her job for a couple of years. She's thinking maybe 5 to 7 years, because the kids, the youngest kid, they had 2 kids. The youngest one was getting ready to start kindergarten. The oldest one was already in 2nd grade, as I recall. And she wanted to be more involved with being a classroom mom and driving the kids to and from soccer and Little League and, friend dates and things like that. Now, knowing what I know about the client, high education, executive, high income, female, I say, well, that's really interesting. Tell me how you're feeling about this decision. And simply, I want to think about it because statistically, it's very difficult for women to take an extended period out of employment or out of a profession to do child care or child raising or child rearing or child birthing or whatever they're going to do, be a stay-at-home mom, and then try to go back into the workforce and regain traction. That can be very difficult. And I wanted to know how she felt about her prospects. And we started down the road of a conversation. And we were talking about that, and I would ask questions and she would respond, and we were talking about feelings. right? And then I turn to the husband and I say, how do you feel about this decision? Because this impacts you in a completely different way. And so he told me about their discussions and what they had talked about and how he felt about being not only the breadwinner, but now the only source of income, and what kind of pressure he thinks that might put on his, sales needs, or how he would have to kind of step up his sales goals so he could provide a little additional income because they had a certain lifestyle. And so we had a great conversation about that. The meeting ended because the meetings typically are about an hour long. They were both on a lunch break, and so we only got to cash flow. We didn't get anywhere else. And had I not, here's the alternative to that conversation. Hey, Dale, I'm thinking about quitting my job and being a stay-at-home mom for 5 to 7 years. Okay. Well, okay. Tell me how cash flow is going to work, because you have this, this, and this, and this. Now you're not going to be saving to your 401k. Now you're not going to be saving to your brokerage account. Now you're going to have a tighter cash flow. You're going to have to shift your budget around. How are you going to continue to pay for the trips and the things that you do as a family? I could have just focused on the numbers, and I would have completely missed the plot. Had I focused on that, I would have missed the opportunity to have the right conversation at that moment. Because what do you think the impact was? Had I just focused on the numbers, the impact would have been like, well, at least now Dale knows our budget, and we talked about the numbers, and boy, I don't know, maybe we need to think about this because maybe we can't afford it. Versus, as we're walking out the door, she turns around to me, her name was Sarah, and she says, thank you. That was a very helpful conversation. And it was the right conversation to have at that time, because they left having a discussion about how possible things were going to be for them as they moved through this very important decision for their family that probably was going to add value to the family. Yeah, there's going to be a financial impact. Sure, the retirement calculation slows down a little bit, but the family impact was possibly not quantifiable in that moment, but in 10 years' time would have added so much value to them. And I believe it did. And so they felt heard. They expressed gratitude for being heard, and it was the right conversation to have. So this conversation of like, I want to leave my current employment and do something else, that conversation has shown up a lot over the past 10 years in working with clients, and most certainly over the past, let's say, 6-ish years with clients, because they experienced me do the very same thing that they want to do, which is, yeah, I'm working for somebody. I'm going to blow that up and go do my own thing because I believe there's a better way to do it. I believe that there's a different way for me to be fulfilled, and I know that I can build a business that's going to be successful. They've watched me do it. They've stuck through that process, and a lot of clients who've made the transition with me a couple of years ago were a major form of support through their transition. They voted with their, moving the accounts and signing new advisory agreements and restarting financial planning and all of that fun stuff. But also just cheering me on through that process. And so it's really cool. Later in the episode, I'm going to talk about how often this kind of gets turned around back on me, but a couple of quick stories. So here's some places where I've seen this show up for other clients in various ways. So I'm going to start with a great client, and I've worked with her for a handful of years. She's a widow, and she decided she was going to move from the state that she lived in up north to a completely different state down south. And that state down south is where her daughter and son-in-law lives and her grandkids are. And so she wanted to be closer to them. She was sensing that it's just time. She's at a point in her life where she's not working. There wasn't a whole lot tying her to where she was living. She was there kind of by herself, really didn't have a lot of close family. And so the move was important. But The move meant, it meant, sorry, the move meant to her, I want to make sure I said that correctly, pulling money out of the portfolio for a down payment on this house, which is scary because she's retired. This is all the money she's ever going to have. And she's going to use part of that money to buy this house. But the mortgage payments were going to cost less than the rent on the townhome that every year keeps jumping by 12 to 15%. So we talked through the considerations. What's most important about this decision? I want to be close to family. Okay, cool. What else? I think I can save money by not continuing to have increases in rent and energy costs because it's cold up north and it's not as cold down south. Yeah, it's hot down south, but not forever, right? Talk through those things. Okay, what about family? What about this? What about the friend group that you have here? What about, the camping that you do in the summer? All of those things. We're talking about life things. Okay, we take care of that. All right, let's look at dollars and cents. What's the interest rate? How much money will we have to take from the portfolio? What's that going to cost you in taxes? Please understand that for the next year or two, your Medicare premiums may increase, your Social Security taxation will increase, and we need to manage those two things. So we're just going to have to adjust as we go along, and that was that. She made the decision. She bought the house. She went down south. She freaked out because the money came out of her portfolio, and then she saw the number and she went, oh my gosh, why is it so bad? And so I had to explain, no, it's not. We didn't do anything wrong. All we did is we took money out of the market and we put it into real estate. We effectively diversified your financial assets, if we want to look at it that way. And yes, that home is secured by mortgage debt, but you were going to make payments anyway for the townhome. We may as well make lower payments and have you own the asset over time that your estate can sell, that as the balance gets paid down, we can always look at flipping over to a reverse mortgage so there's some potential income stream. We can continue to keep your current account invested in the market the way that it's still invested while it's still paying you a monthly income stream. All these adjustments. And so we made the numbers make sense, but only after we understood all of the emotion part around how that money was going to be used. Another great example is another client who late 50s, and we started working together just about 2, maybe 3 years ago. And in the course of, hey, what do you want for yourself? You have this business and it pays you very well, and you enjoy it most of the time. Sometimes you just wish you could shut it down, but it's really busy, especially around the holidays. And she says, my entire life I've wanted to learn how to fly. And now my entire life, Dale Shafer, I've wanted to learn how to fly. So I'm like, let's talk about flying. Tell me more, right? Like, why? Why do you want to fly? What got you interested in, right? So like it becomes this conversation of something that we have in common. And we talked about all the stuff involved with it, the emotions of, just the feeling of being up in the air and that initial, separation from gravity as you leave the runway, and, how fun it is, but kind of scary to land and all that stuff, right? So she had some time in small airplanes. I've had a fair bit of time in small airplanes. And so we had a conversation about it. Then we started talking about, okay, well, in my experience, here's what it costs to get a private pilot's license and to do the training. And, if you're on it and diligent, it's going to take you this number of months, and it's probably going to cost, $12,000 to $15,000 and all this kind of stuff. So we start talking through that. And she decides that maybe for cash flow purposes, that would be very difficult. And I said, well, let's think about this. Let's generate some ideas. And so we started having a conversation about splitting time or maybe, joining a club where you could share the flight instructor and share the billable hours and that kind of thing. Well, she got really creative and went to one of the places that is on the airstrip where she lives nearby. And she was able to negotiate some training time in exchange for consulting services based on her business. And so she got some hours in. And that would have never, ever happened had we just been like, well, we got to make sure we save $12,000 to $15,000 first, and then we'll think about it, right? Because time elapses, and the FAA gets really funky about how long you can fly at certain ages and whatever, and how often your check rides are, and your vision testing, and your flight physicals, and all these things. So we had a great conversation, and she got to experience something that otherwise she thought was completely out of reach and completely unreasonable, and I thought it was friggin' awesome, and it worked out. Another great example of how this shows up is have a client who I've worked with for a while and have been friends with even longer. We met, the way that he and I met is really quite coincidental, totally by accident, but we had an immediate connection and we stayed in touch. And so now we're great friends. A couple of years ago, lost his wife very tragically, very quickly, very unexpected. And, we met several times through the process before she passed. She and my wife had a friendship, and the four of us would occasionally go to dinner and that kind of thing. We live kind of far apart, so it would be like, okay, where can we meet in the middle? That kind of thing. Even though like we're in one big valley, it's a big valley, and it takes forever to get to the other side of it. So, but as we're going through, the process of grief, and a couple of weeks after the funeral, I drive out to the house and we sit down, and he had accumulated a Dale pile, which was all these statements and bills and things like that, because his wife handled all the money stuff. So he really didn't know where a lot of stuff was. And even though we had been working together in financial planning, she still kind of controlled a lot of things. And we had to sort of sort through the Dale pile and see what was there. And I was just asking basic questions, how are the kids? Because the kids were the youngest one was just, maybe entering junior year of high school. One was already out of college, one was in college. And, how are the kids? What are they doing? What are you thinking? Do you want to stay in the home? Are you thinking you might leave or go somewhere else or sell it? Or, are you having a hard time kind of walking down the hallway and going into the bathroom and opening the drawers? I mean, are these things, is it really just devastating to do those things? And so we're talking through his experience at the time, which I cannot imagine. I mean, Melissa and I had a scare probably about 9-10 years ago. And I thought about what life might have to look like, and thank the Lord. I think this is when we didn't have to go down that road, and I feel very blessed for that. But this client was on that road, and so we had some conversations, and I just said, hey, like, what about work? Are you having a difficult time getting motivated, getting up, getting to work, doing the things? And some days, yeah, that's hard. Some days it's not happening, and some days you just feel like you need to take over the world, right? And he was describing how he, really was feeling like he was going to take a couple of weeks off just to kind of reset, maybe go on a trip to another state to go see family, maybe just kind of think through what the next stages of life would look like. And I just said, hey, like, look, if money and the weight of responsibility was not an issue, what would you do instead? And he's like, we'd always talked about trying to come up with a way, or some money, or maybe an investor, or going in with a couple people. And we've always talked about opening this baseball training facility, because, they had worked with ball players down at one of the big baseball programs down in the Southeast Valley of this area. And they were very involved with the baseball program down there. And so they were like, yeah, it'd be really cool to have a place where kids could come in, in the air conditioning, especially in the summer, and they could hit balls, and they could get pitching coaching, and, they could get some training, and they could do maybe some conditioning and weightlifting and nutrition programs and things like that. And I was like, yeah, let's talk about that. And we talked about it for, I don't know, 3 or 4 meetings. And I was like, well, and then in one of the meetings, I was like, well, what else? What else is, something that you kind of always wanted to do, and maybe you're thinking would be a fun reset? And he was like, I don't know. Like, we'd always talked about maybe buying jet skis, but It just always seemed kind of ridiculous. And I was like, okay, jet skis. I wrote it down. Jet skis, baseball training facility, jet skis. And these things kept coming up. And one day I get a text message and it just said, I did a thing. And like 10 seconds later, a picture of 2 jet skis in the garage show up on my phone. And I smiled from ear to ear. And then about 6 months later, that baseball training facility was up and running. And so much fun to dream these dreams with clients and help them see how these things are possible. Another fun one that is still kind of an active case is I have a client who invited me to go to breakfast. This was 2 summers ago, almost 2 years to the date, as I recall. It was in the month of July. I hadn't seen him for a couple of months, and I thought we were just going to kind of eat breakfast, catch up. It's his favorite breakfast place. It's over in Scottsdale. I enjoy it as well. They have really big portions and really good food. And so we sit down, we order the meal, the coffee gets poured. And I was like, hey, man, so like, how are things? And he goes, hey, how do I sell my business in the next year? Just like that. And I was like, hold on. 2 more sips of coffee are required before I answer that question. And we had a conversation. Tell me about that. You enjoy your work. Why are you thinking about doing this? How long have you been thinking about doing this? Why is now the time? Why is 1 year from now the time? What do you want for the business? How much money do you want to try to get from it? What do you think the market looks like? Who do you think would take it over or buy it from you? Is there anyone inside your business that you think could buy it, right? We're having all these conversations. How do you feel? How does your wife feel about this decision? What will you do? Because all the kids are adults. So how will you fill your time? Will you see them more? They all, 2 of the 3 kids are kind of scattered in other states. So are you going to travel more? Are they going to travel more? What are you going to do? Like, what's next? What does that look like? What do you have in mind? And so we had a great conversation about that. And then we went to, over the next couple of meetings, we started working on, okay, let's look at the business as an investor, because right now you're the provider, you're the income source of the business. So let's look at that. All right. What do we need to do in the business to clean up financials, to clean up any cash flow, which he immediately started doing and started streamlining and canceling and, revising certain things. And, what do we need to do with your price point? Is there something we can do with price point to either generate additional revenue to kind of make up for lost revenue through the pandemic, or to create that kind of magic recurring revenue formula in your business? What do you want to do there? How about marketing? What does your marketing messaging say? Do we need to adjust that? Are there other areas that we want to maximize so we can increase business value? And that conversation started 2 years ago. We just had another update meeting last week. And so now we're at a point where we've done a fair bit of those things and we understand how the business is running, the financials. We have a rough idea of a range of values and some areas of exposure. Thanks to my business financial planning software called Riser, we can do a lot of business and estate financial planning around that business together. And so now we're far enough along where we said, okay, here's the time frame. This date we're going to meet, and I'm going to ask you, how are you feeling today about going forward? How are you feeling today about the way the business has performed so far year to date? How are you feeling about continuing the conversation? How are you feeling about sitting down and making the phone call to the person who we need to engage first and foremost to get information about what this business might be worth and to whom and how to market it and all of those things? And then, okay, we agreed we're going to get together on this date. And if everything is good and we have a green light, the next date, which we already have set, is when we're going to make that phone call and start the process. And here's about how long we think it's going to take. And we're going to get all the information. And it all is just from, biscuits and gravy and, what do we do here? And how do you feel about your future? Things like that. I have sometimes, one of my favorite things that ever happened in a meeting is this happened a couple of years ago. Was kind of an intense meeting, husband and wife, big financial decisions to go through. involving a couple of businesses and things like that. And there was some tension in the room, and I really worked hard to kind of clear that up. And at the end of the meeting, we're on Zoom, and she goes, why do I feel like we just went to marriage counseling with our financial advisor? And I just kind of like laughed. I was like, look, if you're going to have a financial argument, do it in my office, like uh, it, when I kept a regular office, which I don't anymore because nobody comes in, but I do shared space now. But when I kept an office, I was like, those tissues aren't for me right there. Like those tissues are for you guys, because you got to work through your stuff, and I'm just here to listen. And I think that's really important, because if you're going to fight about money, you're probably in my presence. I want you to have the argument about money in my office, because number one, I can help give really good perspective on what each of you are saying and how you're coming at this. I get a lot of practice talking with my own spouse about money and decisions and things like that. She's way smarter than I am, as you might expect. But I can like, through that, I can give some perspective, and I can be a good third party listener. And you're probably not going to say mean things about each other to each other in front of me. And that actually helps the conversation, because if your tact is to tear the other person down, you're no longer having an argument about money. You're having an argument about something deeper that you probably should go to marriage counseling for. And I might point that out. And I'm even going to give you a referral, because I have a fantastic counselor who can help people through those situations. A lot of times, people they have counselors, they have a history of going to counseling, all that fun stuff. But if you've never talked to somebody, it's not a bad idea. And I'm happy to help. But when I hear something during a meeting that feels like a point in conflict, and again, I want to use the word feel very heavy here, like it feels like, I can see it in your body language. I can hear it in the words you said or the way you said them. I can see it on your facial expressions. There's a really good book. I cannot remember the author. It's Joe somebody, but the book is called What Everybody Says. And the book goes through with pictures of body language things that give you clues about what's happening internally for the person who's sending that signal. And it's all the things from, like, when somebody, constantly touches their nose, or when they put their finger over their lip, or when they are constantly, stroking their hair, or when a female puts her hand over her necklace or over her chest, or when somebody puts their hand back here while they're thinking, behind their neck, they're holding their neck while they're thinking, or maybe with both hands. All of those things, when they cross their legs, the way that they position their body when their legs are crossed, when they fold their arms, when their arms are underneath the table, all these things, I can pick up on something that's happening with you and inside of you. And I'm probably going to say, hey, what's going on right now? Like, I just heard you say this. Tell me what that means. Or I think maybe there's more you're not telling me. Or I'm seeing something happening here in your face I'm not sure about. And I will do that. So I'm the guy who goes, hey, you got something in your teeth, or like, hey, your barn door's open. Like, I'm that guy. I will like call stuff out, because I don't want you to go out in the world and embarrass yourself. And I let you do it, right? So it's the same thing. I'm not going to let you go out into the world or get into the car or shut down the computer and then have this massive argument because I wasn't paying attention to what was happening in the room and helping you through that. And it's really the best way that I've learned how to help people be better with money, because how we feel about money and our actions and the values that we hold and whether they're aligned or in conflict, that all shows up in how we invest money and how we behave when it's tempting to jump off the plan because the market's going up and stocks are moving really fast and you don't want to miss out, or the market's going down and you feel like you need to hit the panic button and sell everything and go to cash because you're afraid of losing all the money. What's interesting, though, as I said at the start of the podcast, is it's interesting how often this gets turned back in my direction. So, great example is earlier this year, middle of April. We're dealing with the fallout of the potential for tariffs and trade war, and after quote unquote Liberation Day on April 2nd, like the stock market just went bananas to the downside, sold off really fast. Nobody was sure what was happening. There was a lot of news stories. Everybody's freaking out. We're headed into a great, another depression and stagflation, and all these, like, all the worst news stories started coming out. And I had several clients send me messages or call. And they would start with one client started with jokes like, "Hey, I just thought I'd call you and tell you I'm really grateful that we only live in a ranch house because the jump out the window is not really that high." And then like, "Hey, buddy, how you doing?" Right? Or I had a client who sent me a text and it just said, "Hey, I'm thinking about you. I can't imagine it's easy to make decisions in this climate, this environment, not being sure what to do. How you holding up?" Right? Or, "Hey, I know this is stressful. Call me if you want to talk." I have a client saying, "Call me if you want to talk about the economy and the markets." Right? Like, I should be the one going, "Hey, call me if you want to," and I do. "Hey, call me if you want to talk about this." But the client says, "Hey, call me if you want to talk about this." And I loved getting that text message. It made me smile. Or I got one earlier in the year. And it was like, "Hey, just want you to know and maybe you don't hear this enough, but you're really doing a good job and we trust you and we're happy that you're our advisor." Like, I love just random stuff like that. And in my role, even in my role as an advisor, I'm not immune to feelings about money or feelings about what the market's doing or feelings about uncertainty. And when the market is acting up or when something's happening with clients, their account values are going down, maybe they're having relationship issues, there's something happening with their children and it's affecting how they're, having to reset money, or they lose a job or something like that. It weighs on me. Like, I literally do not sleep well when those things are happening. And it's just, it kind of goes back to the reason why I like the sketch, the Your Money in Your Life, that Venn diagram. The reason I like that so much, and in episode 92, Carl said that when he drew this Venn diagram, and every time he sees it, he wants it to move, because money and life are always in motion and they're always moving in and out of one another. And I can't think of anything that's more true, especially about the approach. And it's easy to get focused on things like investing and budgeting, or investing or budgeting, or saving or spending, or, blow up the career or start a business and whatever. But those things have to be approached as and, not ors. They can't be siloed like that, because they break down very, very easily when they're siloed, and you get disconnected and you get out of alignment. And so, and your money and your life and your money, that truly is the intersection of real financial advice. And when those two get very overlapped and almost become one, that's when real financial advice becomes incredibly important for whatever you're dealing with, because that's when you probably need a better conversation. And it needs to focus around, how does this feel? Where does it feel this way? How is it showing up? Where's your head? What are you thinking? What are your factors? What decisions are you considering? Now let's talk about the money. Now let's talk about the investing. Now let's talk about the dollars. And kind of as I wrap this up here, I would say, if this approach sounds totally foreign coming from a financial advisor, good. It should. And I think it's important. And I think we ought to talk about that, because I believe really good financial advice happens beyond the numbers. The numbers are important and we need the numbers. They drive what happens next. But everything that comes before the numbers is the conversation that we need to be having. So if this is a conversation that you want to have, If you have situations where you're like, man, I really wish my advisor would talk to me like that, or man, I really wish I had an advisor to talk with me through these things, we should have a conversation. And I would invite you to email info@lifemoveswealth.com or go to lifemoveswealth.com and click the schedule time with me button. I would also say, if you're not already doing this, follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram and YouTube, because there's a lot of really good content going out regularly about how we have these conversations and about the way that we should be thinking about money and talking about money beyond just market updates and spreadsheets and charts and investment allocation and stock selection and things like that. I really, really am on a mission to change money conversations so that they're more helpful and more productive, and that they bring more alignment in your values and actions around money. Because the better that we can get alignment, the more clarity that you're going to have about what to do next with money. And that truly is the intersection of real financial advice. And by the way, I'm not smart enough to have come up with this on my own. I mean, I used a sketch from Carl Richards. And again, I had him on the podcast, episode 92. Go back and watch that. But be sure to go pre-order his book, Your Money, Reimagining Wealth in Simple Sketches. It's available for pre-order on Amazon, $20. And I would also invite you to do what Carl suggested, which is buy 2 copies, pre-order one from Amazon, and then when it comes out, go buy one from your local bookstore. And as a small business owner, I love that suggestion. Go support, go buy local, and absolutely get this. But I want you to get the book because it is 101 sketches. It's a massive conversation grenade. I've read the book. I was very fortunate to receive an advance copy ahead of my conversation with Carl. I read the book. I have purchased for my own use several of the sketches that are in this book, and they've been great conversation grenades with clients. And so I would invite you to read it, dog ear them, take notes, pick out your favorites, call me, email me. Let's have a conversation about them, and let's start getting better with how we do everything that involves our money and the way that our brains and our hearts intersect those decisions. So that's it. I hope that this has been a helpful episode for you. Look forward to seeing you on the next one. Until then, take care. Thanks for listening to this episode. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share. To learn more about your financial purpose, visit lifemoveswealth.com.